Brand new poll out from CNN. CNN's commentator can't even totally believe what he's saying. They don't even show his face. You just have to hear the disbelief in his voice. All of these media people that are like, what is going on? What is this going on? How is this even possible? Mind you, remember, Donald Trump does not tend to poll that well because people don't actually want to say that they're going to vote for him because that might mean they're a really, really bad person, right? The media has told you, you're a bad person if you actually support MAGA. That is not the Republican Party of yesteryear. That is a bad thing. And therefore, half the country is made up of bad people. So half the country sometimes is a little bit afraid during these polls. So they'll tell you everything that they don't like, which is why there's a 30-point spread in a recent Bloomberg poll between Donald Trump and Joe Biden when it comes to the border, and a 20-point spread on the economy. I mean, these are big, big issues for people. But then it kind of narrows out when you see what the actual numbers are, and sometimes you're just seeing like a 5 or 6 point difference. Well, this new CNN poll predicts there's going to be a winner.
Our new
and
poll,
it's not
which was
Biden.
conducted by SSRS,
I want you to hear
Trump
this. I want you to
Biden,
hear this reporter deliver the news.
And with independent. Our new poll, which was conducted by SSRS, finds Trump is leading Biden, who has ample work to do with his base and with independent voters who are breaking to his GOP rival. In a head-to-head race, 49% of voters say they'd pick Trump for president, compared to 43% for Biden. That's a 9-point Trump advantage with independent voters. And add in third-party candidates, and Trump's lead jumps even more. He has 42% to Biden's 33%, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gets 16% of the vote. Our poll also underscores the challenges of incumbency, and that voters, 4 years later, have a better view of Trump's presidency compared to Biden's. 55% say Trump's time in office was a success, with only 39% saying the same about Biden's presidency.
Yeah, I mean, look at any of the numbers. Biden's not doing really well. In fact, he's actually the lowest of any president in some 70 years. Like, you got to go back 7 decades to find anybody that's done this badly. So, it's not good. All right, don't blame KJP. I blame yourself. I blame your team. I blame Anthony Blinken. I blame your economic team. And I would blame yourself because clearly you can't lead. And so the poor CNN anchors like, oh my gosh. I mean, all of these anchors are like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. They can't believe it. They don't understand it. But here's the reality. You know, it's easy. It's easy during good times to say, okay, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to worry about mean tweets. I'm not actually going to think about the policies that have put us where we are because, hey, you know, everything's good. Everybody was coming out of COVID in November of 2020, and they felt like, well, I mean, they were sort of coming out, and they felt like, hey, you know, I've got enough money in the bank, and I'm doing okay, and things are great. And they didn't really, in my estimation, sink their teeth into the reality of what could be if you had somebody who didn't understand policy. So I kept warning. I'm like, do you want Jimmy Carter 2.0? Or do you want this continuation of successful policies? And apparently, people were okay with Jimmy Carter 2.0. Or better yet, they didn't really understand what they would be getting. I think that's the reality. They did not understand the magnitude of who they were voting for. He seemed like a nice guy, you know, grandfatherly, just hanging out in the basement doing those prompter reads now and then. And they figured that was okay than the guy who would tweet some things that they didn't like. Well, sometimes you got to dig a little deeper. And I get it. You know what? He's not perfect. And I get how much he polarizes situations and people, etc. But I'm just a policy wonk. So I care about things like tax policy. I care about economic policy. I care about border policy. I care about international policy. And therefore, I liked what I saw. And that was something that needed to continue. And when it stopped and it got totally reversed, what did you wind up with? A messed up situation internationally. You have 8 million people that have come over the border since Biden took control. And of course, you got inflation up the wazoo. So it's not at all shocking in any way, shape, or form that you have Donald Trump leading in the polls. I mean, people are kind of nostalgic. Make America Great Again now has a new kind of meaning. I mean, there is some nostalgia. And we really haven't had a president come back ever like this, right? And people are like, oh, yeah, you know, I could go back to that. I remember when it only cost this much to fill my gas tank. And I had a little extra money to go out on the weekends because my grocery bill wasn't so inflationary. And like things seemed pretty good. And I knew that the border was a problem, right? I mean, Trump was always going on about the border. And yet it was nothing like it is now. And the fentanyl use, all these things that are huge problems, right, for our country. These things have escalated in the last 3 years under one president, and his name is not Donald Trump. And so I am not surprised at all by any of these polls. We have another one coming out of CBS News, which shows something, again, very similar. When you look at those swing states, Donald Trump is continuing to lead. There was a poll just out of Bloomberg recently, same exact thing. 5 of the 6 swing states, Donald Trump was significantly ahead. The only state that he was really facing more of a challenge in was actually Michigan, and that was in part related to maybe some of the people edging towards RFK there. So look, there's a lot of time between now and November, and the more they go after him, 91 counts for a criminal, the more they do this, the more I suspect a lot of people, including those in the center, are going to actually rally towards him. So one could anticipate that those poll numbers will be looking stronger and stronger for Donald Trump. So there's one person who doesn't really like that. Well, that would be Joe Biden. And maybe some of Joe Biden's family members. Yeah, no, the family's not too happy because, maybe that spigot's going to get cut off. I don't, got to be careful what I say. Allegedly, the spigot could get cut off. I got to be careful what I say because, maybe Hunter will sue me